This is a guy who has basically ridden roughshod over every rule and every piece of propriety for years and years and years, and thinks that he's above the law.
That the people who seem to have paid a price for the Epstein files so far all seemed to be English. President Trump is on the right side of history on this one.
Andrew, is not only dumb as a brick, but has also lied publicly about his situation. And frankly, if the king could put him on a plane to a US courtroom, I suspect he would do so.
Right, back to tonight. Members of Congress from both parties are now urging former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, which I'm getting very confused by saying, to testify as part of a renewed investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's global networks. They're calling his silence an insult to victims and demanding that he face questioning under oath. President Trump, meanwhile, says he feels sympathy for the royal family, calling it a terrible thing that's happened to them. But is the pressure mounting? And this time, Washington may not take no for an answer. Still with me is Tim Shipman, the political editor of The Spectator. Tim, he's lost his house, he's lost his titles, he's lost his dignity, he's lost his reputation, he's lost everything. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, hauled before Congress, would be the ultimate humiliation, wouldn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people would like to see him lose his freedom, frankly. I mean, what has emerged, the reason the king moved against him is not just because of some kind of medieval blood feud in the royal family.
But God, it feels like one, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, brothers move against their brothers. Andrew was the late Queen's favourite child, and that prevented a lot of this stuff from happening. But now it's his brother and his nephew ruling the roost, then he's in trouble. And the reason he's been kicked out is because a lot of what he claimed in the big public interview he did a few years ago has been disproved. He said he'd cut off contact, and more has emerged showing that he didn't. And clearly the victims would like him to testify. There are a considerable number of MPs back in Parliament in London who would like him to do that. And, this is a guy who has basically ridden roughshod over every rule and every piece of propriety for years and years and years, and thinks that he's above the law. Well, now that he is no longer, the landed gentry, then he ought to be subjected to the same subpoenas and extradition rules as everybody else.
So if he could sweat, he should be sweating,
I think he definitely should be sweating.
Let's talk to Vicky Ward. Someone who's covered every cough and spit of this Epstein web for many years. Investigative journalist Vicky Ward, well, good evening. What happens next for Prince Andrew? And as we were just discussing there, can you conceive a world in which he does get hauled into giving evidence either for the DOJ or for the congressional hearings?
Well, if you were a lawyer advising Prince Andrew, I think, as you've just pointed out, Harry, at this point, he's so down and out, what would be the upside for him in that? That would be my question. I think what you said earlier to your previous guest was interesting, that the people who seem to have paid a price for the Epstein files so far all seemed to be English. But I think you have to go back and remember the genesis of, Prince Andrew's fall here, and it was that BBC interview, because it was so tin-eared and because he didn't apologise to Virginia Giuffre. And I think, it emerges that he lied in it. And I think we were all appalled to read the private emails he was sending to Epstein after that, when he claimed that he'd broken off all contact, etc. And Sarah Ferguson's emails to Jeffrey Epstein saying, I didn't really mean when I said I was embarrassed, it was terrible to hang out with you. I didn't mean it. But I think, what I've always said about this case, it's a lot messier than people think it is. There are unquestionably other deals that have been done by American men behind the scenes, which has kept them conveniently out of court and out of the headlines. I don't think we've heard the end of this. Very interesting reporting coming out last week in both Bloomberg by Jason Leopold and in the New York Times by David Enrich, and it's all around the money trail. And what's so interesting about that is that the money at the end of the day is still the most overlooked part of this story. But without the money, Jeffrey Epstein could not have committed the sex crimes that he did. And so I think what we're getting closer to understanding, one, we learned last week that the leverage the government had over him in 2006 and 7 was in fact that they were looking into money laundering, and they reached out to his then chief financial benefactor, Leslie Wexner, who we still haven't heard from. And it was the fear that the feds were going to go in further with this money laundering that led Epstein to actually plead guilty to the state charges, which, yes, in hindsight, we all think was a ridiculously...
lenient deal cut. Back when. How long? What timescale would you put on us finding out these finding revelations? We're obviously all waiting for the House Oversight Committee to publish the next tranches of their investigations. They say they're going through tens and tens of thousands of documents with a fine-tooth comb. Wouldn't it just be easier for the administration to go, you know what? Let's just get it all out. Why do you think they're not?
It's a great question. It's a great question because, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but from everything I know, from everything I've reported, President Trump is on the right side of history on this one. He cut ties with Epstein. He kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was actually, of all the rich guys in Epstein's orbit, he was the one who was most helpful to Brad Edwards, the lawyer for Virginia Giuffre and for many of the victims. He talked to Brad Edwards twice. In one case, he said, "Don't bother subpoenaing me. I'll just phone you. I'll tell you whatever you want to know." So I think, and I know that Brad Edwards finds his reluctance on this, as baffling as I do. So, I honestly do not know what the reluctance is, but I do think that we are getting closer to holding the people who funded Jeffrey Epstein to account.
Conscious that we are live on television and somewhat legally restricted to what we can say, but is there any more flesh you can put on those bones of where and who those people might be?
Well, look, I've said this many times. We still don't know why Leslie Wexner, one of the richest men in this country, gave Jeffrey Epstein, who didn't graduate college, power of attorney. Okay, that is an extraordinary thing to have done. And we still don't have a reasonable answer as to why Leon Black, another of the richest men in this country, paid Jeffrey Epstein $170 million. And the plot thickens, Harry, because we also learned, again, with these documents that Congress is going through, that Jeffrey Epstein sent an email to Leon Black telling him that Leon Black needed to pay him $40 million and that his children were, quote unquote, retarded, and that Leon Black's financial advisors were idiots. And Leon Black's response to this was to pay him tens of millions of dollars. Well, that's baffling.
Astonishing. Final question before you go, Vicky. It's one I asked Peter Mandelson when he was on this show shortly before his defenestration from the British Embassy here in DC. He said to me he had no idea whether Epstein was actually killed himself or whether he was murdered. But someone so senior in the British establishment to open the door, frankly, to Epstein being murdered. Can I get your response to that? And what does your gut say?
Well, I think it's probably a very honest response. Jeffrey Epstein's own defense counsel, Reed Weingarten, also has no idea what really happened. I mean, Reed Weingarten told me that he met with Jeffrey Epstein the day before he died. Reed Weingarten believed that the non-prosecution agreement would hold, that he could really get Epstein out of prison, that he wouldn't have to face a trial. He said Jeffrey Epstein was smiling and seemed happy. And for a long time, you know, Reed Weingarten has questioned what really happened. So it doesn't surprise me in the least that Peter Mandelson has questions. I think everybody does.
Vicky Ward, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you very much. Still in the studio with me is Tim Shipman from The Spectator. We'll do Epstein murder in a moment, but let's get back to the politics of this. Not even in Britain, where the royal politics have been an extraordinary, saga. For Donald Trump, this is a guy, he put the Epstein files centre of his campaign. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, said, they're sitting on my desk, there's a, the list is on my desk, and then lo and behold, actually, no, it wasn't, then it is, and then it wasn't.
No list at all.
Exactly. This sort of screeching U-turn of full transparency. What do you think's going on? You're a man plugged into this town. Why have they done this U-turn?
Well, look, I think listening to Vicky, it sounds like Trump could make a perfectly plausible case that he had behaved appropriately here. But, go back to what we were talking about in the first segment. Politics is so polarised, the two sides hate each other so much that literally anything linking Donald Trump to this case, any amount of new detail, regardless
which would have been
of how much it exonerates him, is going to be absolute sort of, it's political nuclear weapons, isn't it? It's going to explode, and I can understand why, actually almost ironically, if he's sort of in the clear on it, that why would he sort of blow it all up again if he doesn't have to? Now, he may be forced to, I guess. This information may come out. But you can understand why they don't want to go and touch, the story that has become absolutely toxic. And it's just, but anybody, we're not going to get to the bottom of it unless we get these documents.
Well, I mean, tens of thousands of them have been turned over to Congress. They are making a very valid case that they do have to go through every single one of these for privacy reasons.
Yep.
There's conflicting reports kicking around. That is there going to be more on Andrew? There is said to be more emails. Obviously, some of those emails have been published due to the mysterious availability of Jeffrey Epstein's private email account in whole, published on the dark web, which is where all this stuff is coming from. No prizes for guessing who put that there. But it's this drip is happening. Yet the palace are kind of steering to say actually it's not an expectation of anything more. To come. The line has already been
crossed. I mean, he's already been proven to be a liar categorically in public, and that was enough. And when the king was already of the view that this was embarrassing to the royal family long before he became the king, and then since he became the king, we got all this new evidence that Andrew, is not only dumb as a brick, but has also lied publicly about his situation.
And a dumb and a nasty piece of work by all accounts as well. How much damage do you think this has done to the monarchy, to the house, actually to the monarchy itself, and to the House of Windsor as part of that monarchy? Your rival magazine back in Britain, the New Statesman, wrote a very fiery piece about this. This is justification for sort of bringing down the monarchy. Obviously, they will use any excuse to Republicans will use any excuse to do that. But how much damage has been done to the brand Windsor and to the actual concept of the monarchy?
Well, look, I think the monarchy is fairly enduring. The reason the King and the Prince of Wales acted in this way is precisely because they want to preserve the monarchy and they want to preserve the reputation of the House of Windsor and show that they're doing the right things. Our monarchy has been through many worse scandals and occasions than this.
I'm not sure. Modern times.
If you go back centuries, Harry, I mean, they were all killing each other and usurping each other, and we had an abdication, within our sort of recent lifetimes.
But with that one, he was still entitled to keep the title of the Duke of Windsor. He was still entitled to keep royal sort of airs and graces. He wasn't, yes, he was sort of banished from the land, but he was sent to the Bahamas to be the governor. if it is able, with a flick of a pen, for the king to revoke the divine right of his little brother to be, he's still in the order of succession.
But that's the thing. He hasn't revoked the divine right. He's taken away all his titles. He's still 8th in line to the throne.
The problem is,
if there's some hideous crash, they won't all be getting on a plane together. The other 7, will they?
But does it undermine the concept of hereditary monarchy if the king can just go around and knock that guy's out?
I think it will undermine that for people who already have a problem with it. But the monarchy has ridden through many crises. I mean, even in going back through Charles's lifetime, the divorce from Princess Diana was a big deal, and that if you look at the polling, that rocked public support in the monarchy more than this has done. And I think they've precisely acted to try and prevent further damage. And I think if you look at the polls, I think most people think they've done the right thing. So it's embarrassing, of course it is, but I don't think that this is fundamentally undermining the principles of the thing.
My suspicion is this ends with they're not done yet. I suspect the Sandringham estate is not going to be the end of the saga. I suspect it ends with him exiled.
Well, I'd be very surprised if he lived in Britain again. And frankly, if the king could put him on a plane to a US courtroom, I suspect he would do so.